When I turned 65, I thought I'd finally get the love and respect I deserved. But instead, my daughter-in-law called me a guest at my own family dinner. The words echoed in my mind, sharp, biting like ice slicing through warm flesh. I had spent my entire life building a home, raising my children and creating memories in that house. But in that moment I realized that all of it meant nothing to them. The family I had given everything to was now treating me like I didn't even belong. It was the dinner table where it all came crashing down. The house that my late husband, Greg, and I had built with our own hands. The walls, the rooms filled with laughter, and the moments we shared there. All of it had been my dream, our dream. A place where I thought I would grow old surrounded by the love of my children. But that night everything shifted. I had always believed that family dinners were meant to bring us together, to share stories, laughter, and a sense of belonging. But instead, the dinner table felt colder than ever. The familiar warmth of my husband's presence was missing, and all that remained was an unsettling emptiness. I looked at my son Michael sitting across from me. His eyes didn't meet mine. His wife, Rachel, sat next to him, her posture rigid, her eyes narrowed. I could feel the tension in the air. Rachel had always been distant, but tonight she was colder than usual. It was as if she had decided I was no longer part of this family. I had been waiting for the right moment to speak, to ask what was happening, but it never came. Michael shifted in his seat, avoiding my gaze. The silence grew unbearable, and I could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down on me. And then Rachel spoke, her words cutting through the silence like a knife. "Mom, you're a guest here," she said, her voice cold, matter-of-fact. The words stung, but I didn't show it. Instead, I sat there, my heart pounding in my chest, trying to make sense of what she had just said. A guest? This was my home. Greg and I had poured our hearts into this place. Every corner, every piece of furniture held memories of the life we had built. I had thought that, no matter what, this house would always be a part of me, a part of our family. But in that moment I realized how wrong I had been. Rachel continued, her words flowing like a steady stream of cold indifference. "You're getting older, Mom. We don't have room for you here anymore. We need space for our family, for our future." I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes, but I blinked them away. I wouldn't let them see how much this was hurting me. I wouldn't let them win. Michael still didn't speak. He just sat there, his face expressionless. The son I had raised, the boy who used to run to me for comfort, now looked at me as if I was a stranger, as if I had no place in his life anymore. The realization hit me hard. This wasn't about space or practicality. This was about power. About control. Rachel had made up her mind. She wanted me out, and now it seemed Michael was on her side. I felt the walls of my world collapsing around me. The house that had once been a symbol of love and family was now just a reminder of how easily everything could be taken away. "I don't understand," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "What's happening? Why are you doing this to me?" Rachel's eyes hardened, and she gave a dismissive shrug. "It's time for you to move on, Mom. You can't stay here forever. You need to accept that." Those words stung more than I could have imagined. Move on. It was as if everything I had built, every sacrifice I had made, meant nothing. As if I was just some burden they no longer wanted to deal with. I looked at my son, hoping for some sign of warmth, some hint of the man I had raised, but there was nothing. He was lost to me now, lost to the woman who had taken him away from me piece by piece. In that moment I felt more alone than I ever had before. I had spent my life nurturing this family, and now they were casting me aside as if I were nothing. I stood up from the table, my hands trembling slightly as I pushed my chair back. "I'll leave," I said, my voice steady but filled with a pain that I couldn't hide. "But don't think for one second that I'll forget what you've done to me." I walked out of the room, my heart breaking with each step. I knew in that moment that my life would never be the same. The family I had given everything for was gone, and now I would have to find my own way alone. The next morning, I woke up with the same heaviness in my chest that had settled in my heart the night before. I had barely slept, my mind racing with thoughts of how my family had turned on me. The kitchen felt emptier than usual as I moved around, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the silence. The house was too quiet now, the hum of everyday life absent without my husband's presence. I made coffee, the steam curling up from the cup like a memory I couldn't quite grasp. The house, our house, no longer felt like the warm, welcoming home it once was. Now, it felt like a place I didn't belong, a place they had taken from me. I had always been proud of this home. It had been a dream of mine, something Greg and I had built together. But now it was just a house, filled with the ghosts of a life I used to know. The walls, once filled with laughter and love, now stood silent, as if they too were mourning the loss of what had been. I sat down at the kitchen table, my hands wrapped around the mug, and I tried to focus on something, anything, but the weight of the night before pressed on me. Rachel's words were still fresh in my mind, like a slap I couldn't shake off. "You're a guest here," she had said. A guest? I couldn't believe it. I had lived in this house longer than she had known Michael, longer than they had been married. This was my home. I had helped create it, and now they were telling me it wasn't. I couldn't help but feel the sting of betrayal. It wasn't just the words, it was everything behind them. The coldness, the finality of it. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much had changed in the past few months. Ever since Greg passed, things had been different. Michael had become distant, his visits less frequent. Rachel, on the other hand, had become more controlling. I hadn't noticed it at first. I had been too focused on my grief, too lost in my own sorrow to see what was happening around me. But now it was clear. They were pushing me out, making me feel like I didn't belong, like I was no longer a part of the family I had spent so many years nurturing. The memories of Greg and I building this life together flashed before my eyes. I remembered the late nights we spent planning our future, the excitement we felt when we finally moved in. It had been our dream, and now it felt like a nightmare. I looked around the kitchen, at the table where we had shared so many meals, and I wondered when it had all gone wrong. When did they stop seeing me as family? When did they start treating me like I was disposable? I wasn't sure, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't let them win. I couldn't let them take everything from me. Even if they thought they had already won. I had to fight for what was mine. I finished my coffee and stood up, my resolve hardening with each step. I would not be cast aside like some old piece of furniture. I would not let Rachel or Michael think they could control me. I had spent my life taking care of them, putting their needs before mine, and now it was time for me to take control of my own life again. I walked into the living room, my gaze falling on the photographs of our family. I remembered when they were taken, before everything started falling apart, before the distance between us began to grow. I could feel the tears threatening to fall, but I pushed them back. Crying wouldn't change anything. I couldn't allow myself to fall apart. I had to stay strong for myself, for Greg, for the family I thought I still had. I picked up my phone and dialed Joan's number. She was the one person who had always been there for me, the one person who hadn't turned her back on me. The phone rang twice before she picked up. "Martha, is everything okay?" Her voice was soft, concerned. I took a deep breath before answering. "No, Joan. It's not okay. I don't know what to do anymore." Joan listened quietly, as I told her everything. About Rachel's words, about Michael's silence, about the house and how it had stopped feeling like home. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment before speaking. "Martha, you've been through so much. But you're not alone. You have me and you have your strength. Don't let them push you out. This is your home, and no one can take that from you." Her words gave me the comfort I desperately needed. Joan always knew how to make me feel like I wasn't completely lost. I had to take her advice. I couldn't let Rachel and Michael continue to treat me like I didn't matter. I had built this life and I wasn't going to let them tear it down. "I'll fight for it, Joan," I said, my voice steady for the first time in days. "I'll fight for my home, for everything Greg and I built. I won't let them take it from me." Joan's voice was filled with pride when she spoke. "That's the spirit, Martha. You're stronger than you know." I hung up the phone and sat back down at the kitchen table. The weight of the decision settled over me, but this time it wasn't heavy in a bad way. It was heavy because I knew what I had to do now. I wasn't just going to sit back and let them take everything. I would fight for what was mine. It was time to take control of my life, to stop letting Rachel and Michael dictate my future. I stood up, my legs stronger than they had been in days, and walked toward the door. The house felt different now, but it was still mine, and I wasn't going anywhere. The next few days passed in a blur. I went through the motions, waking up early, making coffee, and pretending everything was fine when deep down, I felt like I was living in a house of glass. Every step I took, every word I spoke felt fragile, as if the slightest touch would shatter everything. I spent my days in the garden, walking around the house, cleaning rooms that hadn't needed attention in years. It was a strange kind of routine, one that didn't feel like mine anymore. It wasn't the life I had built with Greg. It wasn't the life I had imagined. But it was the life I was left with. I knew I couldn't go on like this. I had to make a decision, and I had to make it soon. I wasn't just going to sit back and watch my family tear itself apart. But the truth was, I didn't know what to do. The weight of everything, of the betrayal, of the feeling of being unwanted, pressed on me every minute of every day. I couldn't escape it no matter how much I tried. That evening I decided to take a walk. I needed to clear my head, to think. As I walked along the winding path through the yard, I let the cool evening air calm me. The trees around the house swayed gently in the breeze, and for a brief moment, I almost felt at peace. But then I saw it. The mailbox. I hadn't checked it in days, but something told me to open it. I walked over and pulled out the stack of letters, all of them bills and junk mail. But one envelope stood out. It was a plain white envelope, no return address, and it had my name written on it in neat, precise handwriting. My heart skipped a beat as I tore it open. Inside there was a single sheet of paper. I unfolded it carefully, my fingers trembling as I read the words. Martha, we need to talk. There's something you don't know. Meet me at the cafe on Main Street at noon tomorrow. It's important. It was signed simply, Joan. I stared at the letter, my mind racing. Joan had always been a good friend, someone I trusted with everything. But why would she want to meet in secret? What was this about? I knew I had to go, but a part of me wanted to ignore it, to pretend everything was fine. But I couldn't. Not anymore. The next day I found myself sitting at the cafe, staring out the window, waiting for Joan. I didn't know what to expect, but something in my gut told me it was going to change everything. Joan walked in just after noon, looking as calm and collected as ever. She spotted me right away and made her way over to the table. Martha, I'm glad you came, she said, sitting down across from me. Her voice was warm, but I could see the worry in her eyes. What's going on, Joan? I asked, my voice steady but filled with curiosity. I don't know how to tell you this, she began, pausing as if searching for the right words. But I think you need to know what's been happening. She hesitated for a moment before continuing. Martha, I don't want to upset you, but I can't sit by and watch this anymore. Michael and Rachel, they've been planning something behind your back. They're not just trying to push you out of the house. They're trying to take everything from you. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt my breath catch in my throat, my hands suddenly trembling. What do you mean? I asked, barely able to get the words out. Joan looked around the cafe to make sure no one was listening, then leaned in closer. Martha, they've been looking into selling the house. They want to put you in a nursing home and sell the property. They think they can get away with it because you're older and grieving. But you need to know, Greg left everything to you. My heart skipped a beat as the weight of her words sank in. Greg left everything to me? I whispered, my mind reeling. Yes, Joan said, nodding. He left you the house, the savings, everything. But they're trying to manipulate you into signing it all away. They think you won't fight for it. I sat back in my chair, stunned. I had always trusted Michael. Always believed that my family would take care of me. But now I realized how wrong I had been. I couldn't believe it. The house, the life I had built, the legacy Greg and I had created, it was all at risk. And my own son and daughter-in-law were the ones trying to take it from me. I felt a cold wave of anger rise in my chest, mixing with the hurt I had already been carrying. But as I sat there, listening to Joan's words, something inside me clicked. I wasn't going to let them take everything from me. I wasn't going to let them destroy everything I had worked for. What do I do now? I asked, my voice shaking but determined. Joan reached across the table and took my hand. You fight, Martha. You take control. You don't let them push you around. You have the right to stay in that house. You have the right to live the life you've earned. And I'm here to help you every step of the way. I nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude for my friend. For the first time in days, I felt like I had a plan, like I wasn't just drifting anymore. I had been blind to their manipulation, but now I saw the truth. I had a choice, and I wasn't going to let them win. The following week, I found myself sitting in my living room, the same room where Greg and I had spent so many evenings together. The house felt colder now, emptier, even though it was still filled with the things we had shared. Photographs, furniture, trinkets we had collected on our travels. It was hard to believe that just a few months ago, I had still been making dinner for the two of us, setting the table with the same routine we had followed for years. Now I was sitting alone, staring at the spot where his chair used to be. It was as if the weight of his absence was magnified by the silence around me. I had been putting off the inevitable, avoiding the conversation I knew I had to have with Michael and Rachel. But I couldn't avoid it forever. I needed to know where they stood, what their intentions were, and if they truly thought they could take everything from me. So I called Michael. I hadn't spoken to him much since that night at the dinner table, when Rachel had called me a guest. I had hoped that time would heal the tension between us, but it seemed like nothing had changed. When the phone rang, I felt my heart race. I knew this was the moment that would define everything. "Hello." Michael's voice came through, distant and cold. "Michael, it's Mom." I tried to keep my voice steady, but the hurt was evident. There was a long pause before he spoke again. "What is it, Mom?" His words were clipped, as if he was already tired of me. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice soft but firm. "About the house, about everything." There was another long pause, and then I heard him sigh. "Mom, I don't know what you're thinking, but this isn't going to work. Rachel and I have talked about it. We need the space, and we can't keep pretending everything is fine." His words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had known this conversation was coming, but hearing him say it so plainly, without any remorse, made the reality hit harder than I could have imagined. "You're saying you want me to leave?" I whispered, trying to process what he was saying. "We're not saying that," he replied quickly. "But we need you to understand. We need to move on, Mom. You're not getting any younger, and this house is too much for you to handle on your own." The way he said it, as if it was all perfectly logical, made my blood run cold. They weren't concerned about me, about my well-being. They just wanted the house, the money, the control. "I've been living here for 35 years, I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "I built this life, this home. How could you just push me out like this?" There was silence on the other end of the line, and I could feel the distance growing between us. "I'm not asking you to leave immediately, Mom," Michael said, his tone softening slightly. "But we can't keep living like this. Rachel and I are trying to plan for our future. We want to have a family, and this house is just too much." I took a deep breath, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to spill. "This house is my life," I said quietly. "It's where Greg and I built everything together. You can't just take that away from me." The silence that followed felt heavy, as if Michael was weighing my words against his own desires. Finally, he spoke again. "I'm not trying to hurt you, Mom, but this is the reality. It's time to let go." The words stung, but they also opened something inside me. I realized then that this wasn't just about the house. It was about control, about them taking away everything I had worked for, everything I had loved. And I wasn't going to let them do it. I wasn't going to let them strip me of my dignity, my home, my legacy. "I won't let you do this," I said, my voice stronger now. "I won't sign anything. I won't leave." There was another long pause. "You're making a mistake, Mom," Michael said, his voice thick with frustration. "You're making it harder than it needs to be." "No," I replied, my voice steady. "I'm not the one making the mistake. You are." I hung up the phone then, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew I had just made a decision that would change everything. I couldn't back down now. I had spent my life taking care of this family, and now it was time for me to stand up for myself. I wasn't going to let Michael and Rachel take away my home, my memories, my life. The next few days were a blur of emotions, of trying to figure out what my next step would be. I couldn't just sit around and wait for them to take control. I had to act. I had to fight. Joan had given me the courage to stand up for myself, but now I needed to take that courage and turn it into action. I called a lawyer, someone I had known for years, and asked for a consultation. I didn't know what kind of legal battle I was about to face, but I wasn't going to back down. I couldn't. That night after I made the call, I stood in front of the mirror, looking at my reflection. The woman who stared back at me was older, yes, but she was strong. She had fought for everything in her life, and she wasn't about to let anyone take it from her now. I had built this life, and I wasn't going to let anyone destroy it. Not Rachel, not Michael, not anyone. I knew the fight ahead of me wouldn't be easy, but I also knew that I had something they didn't have: strength. And with that strength, I was ready to take on whatever came next. The next few days passed in a haze of determination and fear. I spent most of my time on the phone, speaking to my lawyer, getting advice on how to handle the situation with Michael and Rachel. The reality of what I was up against was beginning to sink in. It wasn't just about the house. It was about my entire future, my identity, everything I had worked for over the years. I couldn't let them take that from me. But as I prepared for the legal battle ahead, I realized something important. I wasn't alone in this fight. Joan had become my pillar of support, reminding me of my strength and encouraging me every step of the way. She had been through her own struggles, and now she was helping me face mine. I needed her more than ever. One afternoon, as I was sitting in the living room, going over some paperwork, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened the door, I saw Joan standing there with a look of concern on her face. "Martha, we need to talk," she said, her voice urgent. I stepped aside, letting her in, and we sat down at the kitchen table. "What's going on, Joan?" I asked, sensing the seriousness in her tone. "It's about Michael and Rachel," she began. "I've been doing some digging, and I found out something that might change everything." My heart raced. "What did you find out?" Joan hesitated for a moment, then leaned in closer. "They're planning to sell the house, and they're going to do it behind your back. They've already started talking to real estate agents." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. "What?" I whispered, my mind racing. "Why would they do that? Why not just talk to me?" Joan shook her head. "They don't care about you, Martha. They've been planning this for a while, and they're using your grief to get what they want. They think you're too weak to fight back, but you're not. You need to stand up for yourself." I felt a cold wave of anger rise within me. All the pain, all the betrayal I had felt suddenly boiled over. I had spent years caring for Michael, raising him, giving him everything he needed. And now he was trying to take everything from me, everything Greg and I had worked for. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. "I won't let them do this," I said, my voice shaking with determination. "I won't let them sell this house, not without a fight." Joan placed her hand on mine. "You don't have to do it alone, Martha. I'm here for you. And I'm not the only one. There are people who care about you, who want to see you get what's rightfully yours." Her words filled me with a sense of purpose. I wasn't as alone as I had thought. I had Joan, I had my friends, and most importantly, I had my strength. I wasn't going to back down. The next day, I decided it was time to confront Michael. I couldn't keep waiting for him to come to me. I needed to make it clear that I wouldn't be pushed around anymore. I picked up the phone and dialed his number, feeling the knot in my stomach tighten as it rang. He answered after a few moments, his voice flat. "Mom, what's going on?" "We need to talk, Michael," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "About the house." There was a long pause, and I could hear the tension in his silence. "Mom, I told you already, we don't have room for you here. Rachel and I have made our decision." His words were cold, detached. It was as if he was speaking to a stranger, not his mother. "I know what you've been planning, Michael," I said, my voice firm now. "I know about the real estate agents, about the house. And I'm not going to let you take it from me." There was a brief silence before he spoke again. "You don't understand, Mom. We're just trying to do what's best for everyone." "What's best for everyone?" I repeated, my voice rising with frustration. "What's best for everyone is for you and Rachel to stop using me. This house is mine. Greg left it to me, and I'm not going to let you take it. Not without a fight." Michael sighed heavily. "Mom, you're making this harder than it needs to be." "No, Michael," I replied, my voice steady. "You're the one making this hard. You and Rachel. You're the ones who've been trying to push me out of my own home." There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment I thought he might say something, anything to make this right. But instead he spoke in a cold, distant tone. "I don't know what you want me to say, Mom. This is just the way things are." I felt my heart break all over again, but this time I didn't let it show. "What I want, Michael, is for you to respect me. I want you to understand that I am not a burden, and I'm not going anywhere." I hung up the phone, my hands trembling slightly. I knew the fight wasn't over, but I also knew that I had just taken the first step in reclaiming my life. I wasn't going to let them take everything from me. I would fight for this house, for everything Greg and I had worked for. And no matter how hard they tried, I wouldn't let them win. The following days were filled with a restless energy I couldn't shake. I couldn't sit still, not anymore. The weight of the decisions ahead was heavy, and it felt like a storm was brewing inside me. But I knew I had to remain calm, focused. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about my pride, my dignity, everything I had spent my life building. I wasn't about to let them take that from me. I spent hours going over everything with my lawyer. Each phone call, each document felt like a step closer to reclaiming my life. My lawyer had given me some solid advice, and I began to make preparations for the fight ahead. It wasn't going to be easy, but I had no choice. The thought of Michael and Rachel taking control of everything, thinking I was just going to roll over and let them do it, was unbearable. One afternoon I decided to go for a walk. I needed some air, some space to think clearly. As I walked down the familiar street, the weight of it all began to hit me. I had spent my whole life in this town, in this house. And now it felt like everything was slipping through my fingers. I couldn't let them win. I couldn't let them destroy the legacy Greg and I had built together. I had to keep fighting. When I returned home, I found an envelope on the doorstep. It was from Michael. My heart sank as I picked it up, already knowing what it would say. I opened it slowly, almost afraid to read the words inside. The letter was short, but the message was clear. Mom, we need to talk. I've spoken to Rachel, and we've decided that it's time for you to move out. We're making arrangements with the real estate agents, and the house will be sold soon. This is for your own good. The words felt like a slap in the face. I could feel my hands trembling as I held the letter, but I didn't let the tears fall. I had been expecting this, but it still stung. How could they do this to me? After everything I had done for them? The letter was signed with just his name, and I could almost feel the coldness in his words. It was official now. They were taking everything. But I wasn't ready to give up just yet. I put the letter down and took a deep breath. I couldn't let this be the end of it. I called Joan, my friend who had been my support throughout this ordeal. I needed her advice, her guidance. When she picked up the phone, I didn't waste any time. Joan, they've sent me the letter. They're really going through with it. There was silence on the other end for a moment before Joan spoke. I knew it was coming, Martha. But you don't have to let them do this. You still have time. You have rights. We can fight this. Her voice was calm, steady, and it filled me with the strength I needed. I knew she was right. I had rights. And I wasn't going to let them just take everything from me. What do I do next? I asked, my voice shaking slightly. You need to get legal action in place, Joan said. You can't just let them walk all over you. You need to be prepared for the fight of your life, but you don't have to do it alone. You have me and you have your lawyer. We'll get through this together. I nodded, feeling a sense of resolve settle over me. This was far from over. I wasn't going to back down, not now. Thank you, Joan, I said, my voice stronger now. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'll never have to find out, Joan replied. I'm with you every step of the way. The next day I took action. I went to see my lawyer and started the process of officially disputing the sale of the house. I gathered all the documents I could find, every receipt, every piece of evidence that showed my ownership of the house. I wasn't going to leave anything to chance. As I sat in the lawyer's office going over the paperwork, I felt a sense of purpose. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was in control again. I had a plan. I wasn't just going to be pushed out of my own home. I was going to fight back. Over the next few days, I continued to prepare. I didn't tell Michael or Rachel what I was doing. I wanted to catch them off guard. I knew they thought I was weak, that I would just give up and walk away. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I wasn't the woman who had spent her life giving everything to her family, only to be cast aside when they no longer needed me. I was going to make them see that I wasn't someone to be ignored. That night I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where Greg and I had shared so many meals together. I ran my fingers over the surface, remembering the good times, the laughter, the love that had once filled this house. But now it was just me. Alone. The fight had only just begun. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had been pushed to my limit, and I was ready to fight for what was mine. I wasn't going to let them take everything I had worked for. Not without a fight. It had been a week since I had started legal proceedings, and the tension in the house was unbearable. Michael and Rachel were still acting as though nothing had changed, as if their plan to take everything from me was already set in stone. They didn't know what I was preparing, how I had started fighting back. I had become a stranger in my own home. No longer a mother, no longer a wife, just a nuisance. The thought of them selling the house behind my back made my blood boil, but I kept my composure. The more they pushed, the more determined I became. I wasn't going to let them win. The phone rang one afternoon as I was sitting in the living room, going over more legal papers. It was Joan, and I could hear the urgency in her voice. "Martha, we need to talk. It's about Michael and Rachel," she said. My heart skipped a beat. "What's going on?" I asked, sitting up straight. "I've been hearing things," she continued. "They're not just planning to sell the house. They're going to make it look like you're the one who agreed to it. They're going to try and make it seem like you're okay with everything." The words felt like a slap in the face. They were trying to manipulate the situation, make me look like the villain. "No," I said, my voice firm. "I won't let them get away with it." Joan paused for a moment before speaking again. "You need to be ready, Martha. They'll try to do anything to make you back down. But you're stronger than they think. You've got the law on your side. You're not alone in this." Her words gave me strength, but they also made the weight of what I was about to face even more real. The fight was just beginning. Over the next few days, I prepared for the next step. I gathered all the documents I could find, making copies of everything that showed my ownership of the house. I even reached out to a few friends who had offered to help. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how deep the betrayal went. Michael and Rachel had been planning this for a long time, and now they thought they could take what was mine without any resistance. I wasn't going to let that happen. It was time to take control. I decided to confront Michael and Rachel together. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but I had to look them in the eye and make them see that I wasn't backing down. The morning I called them, I felt a surge of anger and fear, but I pushed it aside. I wasn't afraid of them anymore. I wasn't afraid of losing the house. I was afraid of losing myself, of letting them make me feel small and powerless. When Michael answered the phone, I didn't waste any time. "Michael, I need to talk to you and Rachel. Both of you. Now." His tone was flat, but I could hear the hesitation in his voice. "Mom, what's going on?" he asked. "I'm coming over," I replied. "And you and Rachel need to be there. I'm done with the games. It's time to settle this." I could hear Rachel's voice in the background faintly, but Michael's voice was the only one that answered. "Fine. Come over, Mom. We'll talk," he said, but his tone was dismissive, as if he thought I was just going to show up and cave in. I didn't care. I was going to do this on my terms. When I arrived at their house later that afternoon, I could feel the tension in the air. Michael and Rachel were sitting in the living room, looking uncomfortable. They knew what was coming. I took a deep breath and walked in, standing tall in the doorway. "I'm not going anywhere, Michael," I said, my voice steady and strong. "And I'm not going to let you or Rachel take my house from me. Not without a fight." They both looked at me, their faces a mix of surprise and irritation. Michael opened his mouth to speak, but I held up my hand, cutting him off. "I know what you've been planning," I continued, my words sharp. "I know you've been talking to real estate agents. I know you think you can push me out, but I'm not going anywhere. This house is mine. I earned it, and I'm not letting you take it away." Rachel shifted in her seat, her expression cold, but she didn't say anything. Michael's face darkened. "You don't get it, Mom," he said, his voice low and angry. "We're just trying to do what's best for everyone. You're too old to take care of this place. We're just trying to help." "Help?" I repeated, my voice rising. "This isn't help, Michael. This is manipulation. You're using me, and you're using my grief to get what you want." There was a long silence, and I could see the cracks in Michael's facade. He wasn't used to being confronted like this. He was used to getting his way, to having things go according to his plan. But not this time. "I'm not your burden," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "I am your mother. I raised you. I gave everything for you, and now you think you can just take everything from me." Michael looked away, his jaw clenched. Rachel still said nothing, but her eyes narrowed. I could see the guilt in Michael's eyes, but it was fleeting, like he was trying to push it away. "You don't understand," he said, his voice low. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "No," I said, my voice cutting through the air. "You're the one making this hard, Michael. You and Rachel. You've been planning this for months thinking I wouldn't fight back. But I'm not going to let you take my life, my memories, and my home." For the first time I saw Michael flinch. His walls were cracking. I wasn't going to let them break me, and I wasn't going to let them break my family. "I'm fighting for this house," I said firmly. "And I'm not backing down." The silence that followed was thick, heavy with the weight of what I had just said. But I knew deep down that it was the right thing to do. I wasn't going to let them win. Not now, not ever. The days that followed were filled with a mixture of anxiety and resolve. Michael and Rachel didn't speak to me much after our confrontation, but I could feel the tension in the air. It was as if the entire house was holding its breath, waiting for the next move. I wasn't sure what they were planning, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't let them have the last word. I couldn't let them take my home, my memories, and my life without a fight. I spent the next few days doing everything I could to prepare. I spoke to my lawyer regularly, gathering all the necessary paperwork and making sure everything was in order. The thought of losing the house, of being forced to leave the only home I had known for so many years, weighed heavily on me. But each time I thought about it, something inside me stirred. A deep, unwavering strength that told me I wasn't going to let this happen. One evening, after a long day of paperwork and phone calls, I sat down on the couch in the living room. The silence in the house was suffocating. I could hear the soft hum of the refrigerator, the occasional creak of the wooden floorboards, but nothing else. The house that had once been filled with laughter and conversation now felt cold, empty, like it was waiting for something. I ran my fingers along the armrest of the couch, a piece of furniture Greg and I had picked out together so many years ago. Each mark, each scratch was a memory. Each piece of furniture in this house told the story of our lives. And now they were trying to take that away from me. I wasn't going to let it happen. I took a deep breath and stood up. I wasn't going to sit around and wait for them to take control. It was time to take matters into my own hands. The next morning I drove to the courthouse, my heart pounding in my chest. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew I had to file the papers. I had to make it clear that I wasn't backing down. I was going to fight for my home, for everything I had worked for. When I arrived, I was greeted by a friendly clerk who handed me the forms I needed to fill out. It felt surreal standing there in the courthouse, filling out paperwork that could change everything. As I sat down at a nearby table, I glanced around. The courthouse was quiet, almost too quiet. It felt like a place where people came to make big decisions, decisions that could alter the course of their lives. I realized that I was making one of those decisions now. This wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about my future, about my dignity, about my right to live my life on my own terms. After filing the papers, I walked out of the courthouse with a sense of relief. I had taken the first step in the fight for my home. It wasn't over yet, but it was a start. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, emails, and meetings with my lawyer. I had no idea how long this process would take, but I knew it was going to be a long and difficult road. Michael and Rachel still hadn't reached out to me, and I knew they were probably hoping I would just give up and walk away. But I wasn't going to do that. I was stronger than they thought. I wasn't going to let them push me around anymore. A few days later, I was sitting in the kitchen when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I hesitated before answering. When I opened the door, I was surprised to see Michael standing there, looking uncharacteristically tense. "Mom," he said, his voice low. "We need to talk." I didn't say anything at first. I wasn't sure if I was ready to have another conversation with him, not after everything that had happened. But I stepped aside and let him in, my heart racing. We sat down at the kitchen table, and Michael didn't speak for a long time. The silence between us was thick, filled with unspoken words, emotions, and things left unsaid. Finally he spoke. "I know things have been difficult, Mom," he said, his voice softer now. "But you have to understand. Rachel and we're trying to build a future, and this house is just too much for us." I listened to him, trying to stay calm, but inside I was seething. "You think I don't understand, Michael?" I said, my voice shaking with anger. You think I don't see what you're doing? You're trying to take everything from me, and for what? So you can have more? So Rachel can get what she wants. Michael looked down at the table, avoiding my gaze. It's not like that, he said quietly. We're just trying to do what's best for everyone. You're too old to live here by yourself. We want to help you, but you have to let us. His words felt like a slap in the face. They were no longer about helping me. They were about control, about taking what was mine and making me feel like I had no choice. I don't need your help, Michael, I said, my voice steady now. I built this life. I built this home. And I'm not going to let you take it away from me. Not without a fight. He sighed, his shoulders slumping. You're making this harder than it has to be, Mom, he said, his voice tinged with frustration. You're making me choose between you and Rachel. I don't want to do that. I'm not making you choose anything, I replied. You've already made your choice. You've already made it clear where your loyalty lies. There was a long silence, and for a moment, I thought Michael might finally say something that would change everything. But instead he stood up, his face hardening. I can't do this anymore, Mom. I can't keep fighting with you. And with that, he turned and walked out of the house. I sat there, staring at the empty chair across from me, my heart heavy with the weight of his words. The fight wasn't over. But it had just become a lot more complicated. The next few days felt like an endless cycle of doubt and determination. Michael's words lingered in the air long after he left the house that day. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, trying to make sense of his frustration, his coldness. It felt like the last thread of our bond had snapped. The fight had become more personal than I ever thought it would. As I sat in my kitchen, staring out the window at the garden, I couldn't help but wonder if this was the beginning of the end. I thought about everything I had given to this family, the sacrifices, the love, the years I had spent pouring myself into them, into Michael, and into this home. And now it felt like none of it mattered. It felt like I was the one being pushed aside. But I wasn't going to let them erase me. I had spent too many years being strong for them. Now I had to be strong for myself. The next morning I went back to the lawyer's office. I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to let them take my house, my legacy, without a fight. I had gathered everything I needed, the papers, the documents that showed I was the rightful owner. I wasn't sure how long this battle would last, but I knew I had to take action. My lawyer was sympathetic but firm. You have every right to keep your house, he said, his voice steady. They can't just take it from you no matter what they say. You've worked for this. You've earned it. Hearing him say those words gave me a sense of relief, but it also made the reality of the situation sink in even deeper. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. It was a legal battle that could change everything. I want to take the next step, I told him. I don't care how long it takes. I'm ready to fight. The lawyer nodded. We'll file the necessary papers and we'll go from there. But remember, this won't be easy. They're going to fight back, and they'll use everything they can to make you give up. But you can't. You've got the law on your side, and you've got the strength to win. His words stayed with me as I left the office, my mind already planning the next steps. I wasn't going to back down. I wasn't going to let Michael and Rachel have their way. Over the next few days, I focused on the legal side of things. I met with the lawyer again, filled out more forms, and prepared for the inevitable court battle. But even as I did all of this, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about respect. It was about standing up for myself, for all the years I had given to this family, for everything I had sacrificed. They thought they could just push me aside, that I would accept their decisions without a fight. But they were wrong. The day of the court hearing finally arrived. I stood outside the courthouse, feeling the weight of everything on my shoulders. The doors loomed ahead, and for a moment I hesitated. The fear of what was to come, of facing Michael and Rachel in front of a judge, threatened to overwhelm me. But then I remembered why I was doing this. I wasn't just fighting for the house. I was fighting for myself. I was fighting for the woman I had become, for the woman I had always been, even when no one else saw it. I walked into the courthouse, my heels clicking on the cold marble floors. The familiar scent of wood and paper filled the air. It was the kind of place where important decisions were made, where lives were changed. I couldn't help but think that my life was about to change too. Michael and Rachel were already there, sitting across the room, avoiding my gaze. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. They didn't know what to expect, but I did. I was ready. The judge called the case and we all stood up. The proceedings began, and as I listened to the arguments, my heart pounded in my chest. I had spent so many years taking care of everyone else. Now it was my turn. My lawyer spoke on my behalf, calmly and methodically, outlining my rights, presenting the evidence that proved I was the rightful owner of the house. Michael and Rachel tried to counter, but their arguments felt hollow, as if they were grasping at straws. I couldn't help but watch them, feeling a mixture of anger and sadness. How had it come to this? How had the people I had loved and cared for turned into strangers? As the hearing went on, I began to feel a sense of peace. It wasn't that the situation was easy. It wasn't that I knew for sure I would win. But I knew that I had done everything I could. I had fought for what was mine, for what I had built with Greg. I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. The judge asked us all to step outside while they deliberated. The silence in the hallway was deafening, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this moment would define the rest of my life. I looked at Michael and Rachel, standing on the other side of the hallway, their faces unreadable. I wondered what they were thinking. Were they regretting this? Did they see how wrong they had been? I wasn't sure. But I knew one thing, I wasn't going to back down. The decision came an hour later. The judge ruled in my favor. I couldn't believe it at first. Felt like a dream. Michael and Rachel had lost. The house was mine. The relief that flooded through me was overwhelming. I had won not just for the house, but for everything that had been taken from me over the past few months. As I left the courthouse, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The fight wasn't over, but I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my life. I wasn't just the woman who had built a home. I was the woman who had fought for it. And I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me again.